Hello, friends. Today we are going to start a new series on chemical bonding. But for us to understand chemical bonding critically, I would want us to do a comprehensive review on the topic of matter. It's going to serve as a prerequisite for us to appreciate and understand chemical bonding. My name is Dr. Lutando Kwesili, and I'm going to serve as your guide today in this interesting lecture and conversation. Okay? So, whenever we talk about chemistry, what we are doing is to study matter. We study matter in terms of what matter is made up of, the components of that particular matter. We also study matter in terms of their properties, in terms of how they behave, especially when they come in contact with other matter. We also study matter in terms of the changes and transformations they undergo when you bring some external stimuli like temperature. You might see that matter can change from one physical form to another. Something is happening when there is a change in physical states. When you are studying that, you are doing chemistry. You also want to do chemistry when you are studying how matter applies in our daily lives. We are talking about uses and applications of matter. Today, we have a lot of home utilities and home care products like toothpaste, like your vegetable oils, like the soaps, like the detergents. All of these are matter in different forms. And when you try to understand how we apply them in making our lives easy, as well, you are doing chemistry. So, in summary of that introduction, in chemistry, we are studying matter as it relates to its makeup, as it relates to its properties, as it relates to its changes or transformations or reactions, and as it relates to its applications and uses in our daily life activities. Okay? So you can't talk about chemistry without talking about matter. As a matter of fact, matter takes the center stage whenever the subject of chemistry is mentioned. Then you ask yourself, what is matter? Matter is defined as anything that has mass and occupies space. That is the scientific definition of matter. And when you talk about mass, you are talking about the amount of matter, or put in another way, the amount of substance or the amount of stuff that is contained in a particular object. Suffice it to say that virtually everything we can see around us, whatever we can see, feel, or touch, is a matter. So you can't talk about chemistry without talking about matter. Now, it is important to know that every matter you see is held in place by certain attractive forces. Those attractive forces is what we are going to focus on in the course of all the lectures that will be coming up in this series. But before we move into that, let us appreciate the different expressions of matter, the different forms that matter can exist, the different ways matter can exist or express itself, the different types of matter. You discover that matter is first broken into two types. You talk about pure substances and you talk about mixtures. When you talk about pure substances, you are talking about elements and compounds. All right? It is important for us to appreciate the fact that when you talk about elements, you are talking about the smallest unit of matter. All right? And that can take part in chemical reactions. And when you talk about elements, you have some special kind of elements that you always find them at the atomic scale where they exist alone as an atom. You call them homoatomic elements. All right? Example of those homoatomic elements are the noble gases, things like helium. All right? These are noble gases or monoatomic gases. You discover they can be able to exist on their own, and this is because of the fact that they are said to be stable or very unreactive. However, in some other instances, atoms don't want to exist in isolation. They will always want to make contact with other atoms. They will always want to link up with other atoms. And in some cases, atoms link up with atoms of the same element, just like you have a nitrogen gas and oxygen gas. An octasulfur, a nitrogen gas, you have two atoms of nitrogen combining or linking up by a chemical bond, all right, to make that diatomic molecule or diatomic gas. The same is seen in oxygen, chlorine, fluorine, and all the halogens. These are atoms that will always be seen, all right, in twos. In other instances, like in the octasulfur, you see this particular allotrope of sulfur, you have 8 sulfur atoms being linked up by different chemical bonds. So what we are trying to say in essence is that elements, some special class of elements can exist alone, like the noble gases, because they are stable and non-reactive. However, other kinds of elements will never be found alone on a free state in nature. They will always be existing in molecular forms. So we have atomic elements and of course molecular elements. Those molecular elements are simply known as molecules. Okay, so a molecule is made when two or more atoms are chemically combined. They are joined together by some form of attractive forces, which is known as bonding or chemical bonding. So we cannot understand chemical bonding without first appreciating matter. That's why I challenge you, if you have any student, any brother, any colleague, any subject of yours, a child that is struggling with chemistry, I challenge you to get them be part of this my series on chemical bonding. I'm going to open it up in such a way that everybody will, even if you have known chemistry, you're going to have a refresher touch as to what chemistry is all about. I challenge you, by the time we get to the end of chemical bonding, it's going to be a very long haul and series of lecture videos, because we're not going to just touch chemical bonding at the peripheral level. No, I'm going to touch it extensively and exhaustively. So I challenge you to invite your friends to be part of what you are doing in Chem Class with Dr. Luther. Like my videos, love it, make your comments, ask your questions, and share my videos. This will help me to be inspired to even do more. So just like I was saying, I said that when you have two or more atoms linking up or glued or combined together, you are going to make a molecule. So when two or more atoms could be atoms of the same element, all right? When two or more atoms of the same element link up, you have a molecule. But when you have two or more atoms of different elements being joined together by a chemical bond, chemical or attractive forces, you're going to have compounds. All right, so water molecule is a compound because here you have it being made from hydrogen and oxygen, atoms of different elements held together in fixed proportion by chemical bonds or attractive forces. The same thing is sodium chloride, is a compound. From here, you understand that we have two kinds of compounds. All right, we have what we call molecular compounds and we have ionic compounds. Molecular compounds are held by covalent bonds, while ionic compounds are held by what? Ionic bonds. And this is what we're going to go into in details as we progress in this series. All right, so we also have other examples of compounds like ethanol, carbon dioxide. Okay, so then we have what we call mixtures. And mixtures are broken down, of course, into homogeneous mixtures and heterogeneous mixtures. When you have a homogeneous mixture, you're going to have solution that has one phase. You're not going to have separation or layers in such solutions. And this is a beautiful example of that is when you dissolve sodium chloride in water, you're going to have a one-phase solution. All right, the sodium chloride is still in the water, but you're not going to see the particles because they are, dissolved in that particular solvent water. So air is another example of a homogeneous mixture. Of course, air is a mixture of gases like oxygen gas, nitrogen gas, noble gases like argon. All of these are dissolved, of course, in nitrogen, which gives us a homogeneous mixture. All right. Nice. We also have a solid kind of solution or an alloy of copper and zinc, which is known as brass, and that's an example of a homogeneous mixture as well. So when you talk about heterogeneous mixtures, you are going to have a mixture where you have separation of phases. Okay, For instance, a good example is when you introduce sand into a cup of water, you're going to have your lump of sand settled at the bottom, as you see in this diagram, with your water forming the top layer. So once you see the separation of those layers, you know you are dealing with a heterogeneous mixture. Another example is when you mix these two immiscible liquid, oil and water. Of course, these are immiscible liquids. No matter the agitations, they will settle out again into their different layers. Such kind of mixture is known as heterogeneous mixture. So matter can express itself in all of these formats or forms, all right? But an intelligent mind will ask, now that we know the different compositions or different expressions of matter, what is matter actually made up of? If you say that everything that you see, even human beings, animals, trees, are all matter, then what makes them up? And if you say everything is made up of matter, why are different matters not looking exactly the same? Why don't I look like an animal or a chair? Everything that is made up of matter is different. That is simple because the different substances that make up matter are different elements, and these elements are arranged in different proportions to make different compounds. So that's why we have different things, because what makes them up, the elements and compound that makes them up, are different, and as well are in different proportion in terms of their composition. All right? So to answer this critical question, where you ask what is matter made up of and how is everything around us made, you need to appreciate the basic concept and the principle of chemical bonding. If I get a piece of paper and I want to yank it apart or break it apart, you will notice I will need to exert some kind of forces to be able to do that. There are still some other pieces of paper that have stronger kind of strength like that. So I will have to exert more force. Even to break this marker, I will have to exert more force. And that is because every matter the particles of every matter are being held in place by different attractive forces of varying strengths. And those attractive forces of varying strengths are what we know as chemical bonding. As I've said, even though some atoms or elements will want to exist alone in a free state, like the noble gases, and that is because they are said to be stable and non-reactive. That is because they have 8 electrons in their valence shell. That's because they are comfortable and okay. That is because they are loners in the word parlance. When you say someone is a loner, it means they want to be on their own. They're not having much interactions with people. So at that macro level, you see that human beings will have people like that who they believe they have everything, set out or mapped out for them, that every other person is envying them. The same thing happens at the molecular and atomic level. Atoms most times don't exist alone or in isolation. Like I said before, they will always want to link up and and leverage on certain contact with other atoms for them to become more comfortable. In the macro world, that is why we go to do business, so that we can build relationship and build leverages that will help us become economically, financially stable. So you can't become successful in isolation at the macro level. At the micro level, at the atomic or molecular level, atoms will always want to, interact, combine, mix up with other atoms for them to attain the kind of stability that the noble gases are enjoying. In the course of interacting or mixing up with other atoms, they form what we call molecules. And those molecules could be compounds, or could be molecular ions. And all of these compounds, molecules, and ions is what ultimately gives rise to entire matter that you see everywhere. So the matter you see everywhere are actually composed of molecules and compounds and ions, which are ultimately aggregations of different atoms that are held together by some form of electrostatic forces or attraction, what we know as chemical bonds. Beautiful. I don't know if it's making sense. If it's making sense, then you will agree with me that chemical bonds are links or glue or attractive forces that hold two or more atoms in place within a molecule, nice, or a compound. So even though two or more atoms are held in place, all right, by these attractive forces known as chemical bonds, when they ultimately form those molecules and those compounds, it is important to also know that molecules are also held together by weaker attractive forces, what we call intermolecular forces, or we also know as van der Waals forces. Just like water molecules are held together in place at their different states of matter by what we call hydrogen bonding. Again, those attractive forces that hold two or more atoms in place to make chemical bonding, we call them intramolecular forces, or you call it interatomic forces. I'll say it again. The chemical bonds, that force of attraction that holds atom A to atom B to make a molecule, is known as intramolecular forces, or you call it interatomic forces, all right? The forces that hold atoms together. And those are stronger kind of force or bonds, all right? Those ones are known as chemical bonds, all right? But apart from these chemical bonds that hold atoms in place to make molecules or to make compounds, we have said when these molecules are made, molecules are also held in place by weaker attractive forces, which we know as intermolecular forces, or what we know as van der Waals forces. All right, so these are weaker kind of attractive forces that hold molecules in place within a matter. Nice. I don't know if you are seeing it. So matter has a lot of attractive forces, could be chemical bonding or van der Waals forces that are all acting together, trying to hold our matter in place. In the course of this series of chemical bonding, I'm going to unbundle all of this. We're going to look at chemical bondings extensively into the different types and subtypes of chemical bondings. We're also going to look at those intermolecular forces in details. When you talk about intermolecular forces or van der Waals forces, we are going to extensively talk about what we call the dipole-dipole interaction. This is the kind of interaction you have when you have hydrogen bonding, those weaker forces that hold molecules, water molecules, hydrogen fluoride molecules together. All right. The second type of van der Waals force is known as London dispersion forces. These are known as, induced dipole. All right. These are temporal dipoles that are built as molecules begin to come in close proximity. As a matter of fact, it is important to know that all these bonds we are talking about and all these weaker forces are made possible when atoms come closer enough. When atoms come in close proximity, they make those chemical bonds. When molecules are in close proximity, those weaker forces tend to pull them and hold them in place. That means that anything that can take atoms away from each other or remove them from their close proximity, we ultimately break the bonds or that glue or that link they enjoy, ab initio. That means that when molecules are held together by these weaker forces, if for any reason they try to stay away from themselves, those weaker forces will ultimately reduce, if not entirely broken. All right? So, because of what we are saying, at this juncture, I want to tell you that the entire universe as it is constituted or made of only two things: the universe you see and everything inside it. According to the laws of science and chemistry, the universe is made up of matter, which is mass, and energy. So we cannot talk about matter in isolation. We must talk about matter in relation to energy, because it is energy that determines whether matter will stay in one physical state or it will gonna change into another physical state. Recall the fundamental law of chemistry, which is the law of conservation of matter, states that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. However, if you play around with certain factors like temperature, you're going to have matter changing from one form to another. That is why you cannot talk about matter and chemical bonds without talking about the the relationship between matter and energy. Okay? Recall that the first law of thermodynamics states that energy can neither be created nor destroyed, even though they can be converted from one form to another. So that looks like you see that there is always a relationship between matter and energy. And the person that helped us to trace that relationship is known as a great physicist known as Albert Einstein, where he gave us this relationship or this equation, E is equal to mc squared. What he's trying to say is that every matter or every mass has some sort of energy component. All right? Every matter has some sort of what? Energy component. So energy is directly related to matter. That's why we say that matter can neither be created nor destroyed. Can be changed from one form to another. The same way, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but it can be changed from one form to another. So matter and energy, mass and energy are equal and the same. Nice. So this whole concept is important we understand it, so that we understand why matter can change from one physical state to another. If there are some attractive forces holding them in place, especially when they're in close proximity, what are the constraints that can actually make them lose the close proximity? And what will be the effect of such distancing? All right? This is what we're trying to appreciate. Nice. So here, the E here represents energy, and M represents mass, and C is the speed of light. Okay? Nice. So every particular particle or matter contains some kind of kinetic energy, which is energy in motion, energy they possess in motion. And this is because they are constantly moving. Every particle of every matter is constantly moving. All right? So, and of course, the mass there, as I said, is the amount of stuff or amount of matter or amount of substance present in any given object. Okay? And the unit of mass is measured in kilogram. And it's important to know that mass, the greater the mass, the more resistance to motion. So if you have two boxes of exactly the same size, but the component of matter here is 100 kg, and the content of the matter here is 50 kg. You see, it's exactly the same box, the same shape, the same size, but the component, the particles in the two matter, in the two objects are not the same. So the one that is heavier, that has greater mass, is going to have more resistance to what? It's going to have more resistance to motion. So it will take you twice the energy it will take you to move 50 kg. Okay, the energy it will take you to move this 50 kg of box, it will take you twice that energy to move 100 kg of box. That's why we say that mass, the greater the mass, the more resistance to motion. There will always be a relationship between mass and energy. This is critical, and this is fundamental if you must understand chemical bonding. And this is critical if you must understand how bonds are made and how bonds are broken. Because in the course of chemical reactions, old bonds are broken and new bonds are formed. All right? In the course of chemical changes, in the course of some sort of changes within certain molecules, you can have them changing from one physical state to another. Nice. So, as I've said before, the entire universe is made up of matter and energy. And you can agree with me, we cannot talk about these two in isolation. Whenever you talk about matter, you will always study energy that, goes around that particular matter we're talking about. Because that tells you how the atoms are interacting. Understanding the energetics of different particles of matter gives you information as to the different states that matter can exist in. So we can't talk about matter without talking about the kinetic theory of matter. And this kinetic theory of matter is what helps us to explain the different states of matter. Matter exists in three major states, even though we have the fourth state. The first state is the solid, the liquid, and the gaseous phase. And the fourth dimension of the fourth stage is known as plasma. All right? So you can't understand all of these states of matter without understanding the kinetic theory of matter. So the kinetic theory of matter, again, helps us understand the states of matter, especially the three states of matter. And the main postulates of the kinetic theory of matter is a summary of all I've been saying in this lecture since we started. The first postulate of kinetic theory of matter is that matter is made up of molecules. And those molecules that make up matter are in turn made up of atoms. This is exactly what we have been echoing since the inception of today's lecture. The second postulate of kinetic theory is that these molecules that have been formed when atoms come together, they are constantly in random motion. They are constantly moving in haphazard motion all over the places. And in course of doing that, they keep bumping up on each other. They keep bumping onto each other. All right? And not just bumping up on each other. Sometimes they bump on each other and bounce off and bumps onto the container, the walls of the different containers, especially when you have them in a confined or a closed system. All right? So the second postulate is that these molecules we are talking about are always moving. They are in constant motion. So you agree with me that they have some kind of kinetic energy. They have some sort of kinetic energy. That's what we are saying. So these molecules are in constant motion and they keep bumping up on each other, which means they keep coming in close proximity on each other. And sometimes when they come close proximity with each other, some forces of attraction, which is some kind of bond, actually, is formed when they are in close proximity. All right? This is beautiful. And again, they also bounce off and keep colliding with the walls of the container. Okay, and the third postulate is that there are forces of attractions between these particles, all right, which increases, all right, which increases as the distance between the particles become closer. Do you see it? I said there are forces of attraction, there are bonds between the particles of this matter. So whatever that will make these particles come close together will make them build some strong forces of attraction or chemical bonds. So as particles are moving in random motion, when they come close enough, get some sort of bonds or attractive forces hold them together. All right. So when particles come together, ultimately they are going to have some force of attractions that is made. All right. So just like atoms, they come close enough, they can either transfer electrons or they share to make stronger kind of attractive forces known as chemical bonding or bonds. And of course, when molecules are in close proximity as they are moving, some kind of weaker attractive forces known as van der Waals forces. Example of that is hydrogen bonding seen in water molecules also forms there, especially when they come in close proximity. So that means motion of particles has a lot to do with the kind of attractive forces that are holding them in place. You cannot talk about kinetic energy without talking about heat, especially in systems that has to do with particles. When particles absorb heat, their kinetic energy goes up. So the fourth postulate tells us that the average kinetic energy of particles depends only on the temperature of the system. As a matter of fact, the higher the temperature, the higher the kinetic energy of particles. So as particles of matter or atoms acquire more kinetic energy, they begin to move faster. And as they are moving faster, they continue to move away from each other. So whatever attractive forces that were holding them in place when they were close enough begins to weaken and sometimes ultimately broken. Those attractive forces are either chemical bonds or in some other instances what we call intermolecular forces or van der Waals forces. All of these are temperature dependent. So the strength of these attractive forces or chemical bonds or attractive forces that hold atoms or particles of our matter in place, they are all dependent on the average kinetic energy of the particles involved in that system. And the average kinetic energy of the particles involved in that system is directly dependent on the amount of temperature. Take water molecule, for instance. When you subject it to when water is in solid form and you subject it to heat, you discover that those forces that hold them in place, begins to loosen up and the particles begins to move away. The distance, the proximity begins to close up and they begin to move away. And you have matter changing from one form, from solid to liquid. If you continue subjecting the liquid to high temperature, you discover that the particles of the liquid will even eventually move faster and move further away from each other, and they change or vaporize into the gaseous phase. If you continue to subject it to higher heat, those attractive forces even begin to loosen up entirely. At the plasma state, you now get atoms, completely disbanded into the component ions. So plasma simply means soup of positively and negatively charged ions, which you have when you subject gases to very hot temperature. At that point, you have what we call ionized gas. So, in summary, everything we see around us is matter. And all we do in chemistry is to study matter in terms of its composition, in terms of its behavioral properties, in terms of the changes or transformations, and of course in terms of its uses and applications. So there are many ways matter can express itself as pure substances of mixtures, as pure substances of elements and compounds, and as mixtures you have homogeneous mixtures and heterogeneous mixtures. And you can agree with me that particles of matter are held in place by some attractive forces, which are usually interatomic forces known as chemical bonding, or intermolecular forces, weaker attractions known as van der Waals forces. All right, and all of these bonds of forces are the stability of these attractive forces is dependent on the energy of the entire system. Because particles are in constant motion, they keep colliding with each other, and of course the walls of their container. And when they come in close proximity, those attractive forces